Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of a departure from the way we normally do shows. Try something new. If you like it, let me know and you'll get more of it. If you don't, let me know and we'll talk about it. Today's show I'm gonna title Challenging Reality When the World Calls You Crazy. Sense-making in an Age of Senselessness. Okay, so where does this come from? Basically, one of my recent podcasts delved deeply into basically the Omnist story of creation. Now, this is my version of creation, okay? It's not in the Bible. It's not in the Sumerian texts. It borrows from all of those traditions and tries to make sense of them in the context of what I have learned personally through my own spiritual experience, which I've covered in other places, so I'm not going to go into that again. And yes, it doesn't match most anything that anyone has ever told you was the truth. And so I got this question from one of my viewers. We're going to segue to the topic. I'll read you the question and my initial response, and then we'll talk about this whole thing some more, because I think it's a very important subject for folks to cover and tie in with my overall message, because I don't want you to come away with the idea that I'm just another snake oil peddling spiritualist. Okay, so let's look at this. So WF says, I really like to for once see a visual representation of all these things you've been talking about. You clearly put a lot of thought into it despite your technical limitations. Okay, well, I would say those are technical limitations of the tools I use and not my technical limitations. I just don't like to spend a lot of time in post editing. And anybody that does podcasting knows that that takes a lot of work. It's not something I enjoy doing it, so I don't do it. If you don't like my channel because of that, don't tune in. I do things my way because it's my channel. And my viewership maybe reflects that. Well, tough. I'm not here to make something slick and attractive and attract likes, shares, and subscribes. Anyone who knows me knows that's not what Rob is all about. Okay, however, I am curious, how would you respond to someone calling this existential abstract map of yours insanity or delusional, even if those people are also invested in the spiritual and esoteric nature of things? A fair question. So here was my initial answer, and then we'll riff on that a bit more after having a couple of days to digest this. And so you'll get to see my initial response, maybe a little bit defensive, which most people are when they're challenged, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is the nature of the beast. I admit to having an ego. I admit to being bruisable through my ego. Anybody who doesn't is hiding their humanity, I would argue. Okay, and hiding humanity, hiding the soul, is what I call spiritual bypassing, which is a lot of what goes on in the virtue signaling spiritual community. Okay, so I say, I would point out that all the really great revealers of the multiverse's mysteries were attacked and ridiculed by those who clung to their comfortable dogmas, even to the point of death. The truth often makes those clinging to falsehood very uncomfortable, especially if it points out sins that they could be paying for many lifetimes. I welcome anyone finding fault with my presentation. If they choose to call me mad or delusional, that is their choice. of an easy dismissal of my truth. If I am right, their error will be exposed at some point in their journey, as they discover that reincarnation is very, very real, and the afterlife works, sorry, spelling error there, like, see, I make mistakes too. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be. The afterlife works like one of the many variations I've associated with many lesser gods and goddesses that vie for disciples. It only shows they are too dogmatically dense to comprehend the full significance of the as above, so below pattern, as it applies to all of creation. Exactly why I always teach that traditional religions will persist for quite some time, so long as they can be tolerant and coexist with deeper truths. After all, I'm not negating anyone's belief system, just explaining it in a broader context. If that's madness, I'd assert that it is divine madness, a form of ecstasy that underpins all the mystical lore of all religions. I'm just proposing that this mystical revelation can be brought into line with the truths of scientific study of nature by someone with a wide enough perspective. And I think I did a pretty succinct job of explaining what omnism is all about. You don't have to accept my creation story. You can be an omnis Christian if you like. You can be an omnist Buddhist. You can be an omnist Muslim, Hindu of any particular variety. What makes you an omnist is the willingness to suspend disbelief in other people's spiritual experiences, and the willingness to accept scientific proof that invalidates your beliefs and modify your beliefs accordingly. Otherwise, if you don't accept truth when it is presented to you, when it is backed up by experimental data, when it is supported by many, many observers, then you are welcoming cognitive dissonance. And I would challenge you that what tests our faith in anything is cognitive dissonance. And we cling to our faith, to our dogma, to what we want to believe is truth, what we want to believe is right, until it becomes so painful to cling to that we throw it away. And I would propose that if you let the pain build to the point that you want to throw out your worldview, you're in a very vulnerable place. This is the place from which people get sucked into cults. People will jump from being a Republican to a Democrat, or being a Democrat to a Republican, which we've seen a lot of people jump lately in the last 10, 20 years. This is not something new. This is how basically those that want to control and manipulate you pull you into a new pole of cult Marxism, which is not just Marxism, but commercialism. Basically, all isms that are promoted to a religious level are essentially different poles of what I call cult Marxism, which I talked about in yesterday's talk. So this is how these two tie together. Okay? And the whole goal of these cults is to keep you engaged with this echo chamber, with the cult, and isolated from anything that challenges it. Okay, so this is something that all cults do. All spiritual leaders who want it to be about me, who want to have more followers, who want to gain more notoriety, who want to have more likes, shares, subscribes, and sponsors, and more trips to conferences, and chance to speak in front of blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's what they do to maintain their position. They turn it into a cult and get a cult following. And you know, there's really nothing wrong with that until that cult becomes more important than the truth, right? And then you're kind of sucked in. You've got to keep spouting the same line of bullshit, even in the face of massive evidence that the bullshit's not right. And this is why I become very critical of many of the spiritual teachers, many of the folks that I still will tell you were great signposts, street lamps on my path. But now I am criticizing them. Now, that's my right as an individual. I am allowed to have opinions. I am allowed to have my own cult. And if nobody buys what my opinions are, fine. It's not my problem, it's your problem. If you feel challenged by what I say and you choose to attack, you choose to call me crazy, you call me insane or delusional, that's your judgment. That is your karma, not mine. I am just sharing my truth with you. I'm not forcing it down your throat. I am not trying to make you feel bad about your decisions. They're your decisions. They're your karma. What I know is that there are many universes. The multiverse is a real thing. Parallel timelines are real things. I'm not making this up. They're finding evidence of it in science all the time and tying that together. And if you look at the discussions going on among the most leading edge physicists, you will hear that they're all coming to agree on that point. They're all coming to agree that there is some sense that what we are experiencing is some kind of an artificial construction. What we see as solid isn't really solid. What we see as, what we experience as truth is really, really far away from the truth that underlies the mathematical models that they've cooked up to explain physical forces. And what I'm telling you as the truth is that they just haven't figured out the mathematics, the formulas for spiritual truth. Because it's an elusive thing. It requires making measurements that go outside the physical universe. By definition, a materialist approach to science is never going to find those truths. In fact, their whole premise for their scientific inquiry is that those truths don't exist. Everything outside the physical world that you can measure with standard electromagnetic techniques is illusion, they say, is a dream, is a malfunction of your neurons creating some weird signal that gives you nonsense to process. Now, this is the argument of materialist science, and I'm telling them they are wrong. They have, in fact, nothing to back that up except their sense of disbelief. It's insanity! It's delusional! And these folks are acting in their own scientific way, just like the Spanish Inquisition did, when scientists started questioning the dogma of the Catholic Church. So, folks have been through this before. And anybody that's on the leading edge of truth is going to get attacked, called insane, called delusional. And sometimes they are. Sometimes people come up with, this is the thing. You can take if you could have had the experiences I had spiritually, okay, the ayahuasca ceremonies, the interesting trips through alternate reality that I've had to endure on my path since the acceleration of my spiritual awakening about 5 years ago, you probably would have interpreted them very differently than I did. Why? Because you have a very different point of view. Now, most of you probably haven't gotten degrees in physics. You probably haven't studied at Princeton. And you probably haven't delved deeply into history or comparative religions or game theory or simulation theory. Okay, there are a lot of places I've touched in my background that made me able to receive spiritual revelation in a way that no one else probably has ever received it before. No one could possibly have received it before because they didn't grow up in this very weird time we're in right now where technology is exploding so fast. The internet is going crazy with new creations and stuff like that. I mean, how many of you have done all that and then spent close to half of your life also being an actor and being involved in the performing arts? Performing professionally in New York City. Not big name stuff. I'm no big movie star. I think I'm quite a talented actor. But I'm not a typical actor because I don't self-promote that much. I have a real hard time with self-promotion. Especially when it involves crossing the line into basically prostitution of your ideals. That's where I drew the line, and that's one of the reasons why I left the acting world and I'm never going back. I may do a little voiceover stuff here and there, but I only audition for stuff that doesn't make me puke. I avoid a lot of auditions for things that I don't want to be involved in selling. Okay, so I'm not going to make much money from voiceovers anymore. Fine. I can sleep with myself at night. Others are willing to compromise. Others are willing to look the other way, to broaden their beliefs, to make a big tent of this thing and say everybody's right? And there's a good segment of the spiritual world that says, well, everybody's truth is valid. It's all true. You can make anything true. That's what the law of attraction is all about. You can make it be whatever you want. I can define my own identity and force it on everyone else because they have to accept me. This is a lot of what's going on now, and it is being supported by a lot of folks in the spiritual community. They think they're actually helping people. They're empowering them. They're making them feel good about themselves. They're helping them solve their problems by feeling good. Well, that may be true to some extent. I would argue that feeling good is not the same as actually being good. Feeling happy may not be sincere. It may be false happiness, and false positivity, in my opinion, is just as bad as false negativity. In fact, it could be worse because in your bubble of false positivity, everything is wonderful, everything is love and light and oneness. You are very vulnerable there because your bubble is easily burst because it's not true. It is absolutely not true. And you can prove it the moment you find somebody that doesn't agree with you, that doesn't think your definition of this perfect high vibe life is the same as theirs. And this is why we've got rabid vegetarians coming to odds with rabid crystal worshippers. Oh, this is the way to enlightenment. You've got to, there's all these poles of dogma that are cropping up in the New Age spiritual community, just like they did in the Christian community, just like they did in the Muslim community, just like they've done in every traditional religion since the beginning of our species. We invent religions to explain what we don't understand, to the point that we've even invented a religion that worships science, that says, well, science explains everything we don't understand, so we don't need any of those other religions, which is complete bullshit and has been proven in spades by the pandemic, where the science worshippers bowed down to God Fauci and the CDC and the WHO and the NIH, only to find out that those folks were false gurus, fake messiahs, telling you a line of bullshit that didn't help you at all. In fact, got you, many of you, vaccinated multiple times with something that they're now finding out is much worse than the disease it was designed to fix. Now, how silly is that? And that's what happens when you follow a Pied Piper like a lemming off a cliff. And there are many people still stuck in that pole of delusion, that cognitive dissonant box that is still, well, I'm going to take the next booster because it's designed to attack multiple all the different variants and all the future variants, and Fauci, God Fauci, says that there's going to be a super vaccine that cures everything. That's the kind of bullshit that these folks are spreading, and it is absolute bullshit. They do not understand the human apparatus, the apparatus of life, as well as they think they do, because they're only approaching it materialistically. There is a spiritual component to everything, and this is the fundamental thing that I teach. It's not something new. In fact, the first folks that really delved deeply into spirituality and tried to bridge the gap between religion and science, these were back in the days of the glory days of Greece, the great philosophers. And there was, in fact, a school of them that basically believed this particular thing, that everything has a soul. And what they didn't quite get was, and that's basically mirrored in Eastern thought too, about reincarnation and karma. That's why you've got so many sects of Buddhism and Hinduism that are afraid to step on a living thing, and whose monks want to sit around and meditate while somebody else goes and collects their food so they don't have to take on any of the karma of killing anything, which is kind of stupid because everything has a soul. By consuming things, you are transforming them into other kinds of soul vehicles. The soul vehicle, the soul that represents an entire fruit, is destroyed the moment you eat the fruit. Yes, there are little sub-souls within that go on. If you don't eat the seeds, you spit them out, they can grow and they can make new fruit. But DNA is just a programming tool for creating soul vehicles. It creates vehicles that have a certain experience range to give to souls. And the vast majority of souls are inhabiting vehicles that don't have a lot of experience. They don't give them a lot of choices. The fruit doesn't get a choice about whether to be eaten or not. And that's not a bad thing. Would you want to spend eternity as a fruit, waiting for somebody to eat you, or bacteria to dissolve you into nothingness? These soul vehicles are designed to be expendable. And as I often mention, one of my most memorable spiritual moments was a remembrance of a past life where I was basically the leader of a tribe. Shaman, leader, I don't think there was much difference back in that when. I was sitting on top of a hill at the end of a day that had been pretty good. We brought down a big deer, and everybody had eaten a whole bunch of meat and had a good time, and it was like, red letter day for a tribal leader. And I was sitting there taking the first watch of the evening up on the hill overlooking our campsite. And all of a sudden, this horrible feeling came over me of sorrow, because I thought about the deer that we'd killed and took its life, and how much joy I actually felt in bringing it down and delivering the killing thrust. I don't know how that was happening. Maybe it wasn't me, maybe it was somebody else, but I felt a great deal of guilt for that death. And as that wave of guilt swept over me, the spirit of that deer spoke to me. And it said, "Don't feel guilty, don't feel bad. I gave my life to your tribe. All I ask in return is that you wish me a better incarnation, because I would love to have a chance to be like you are, with so many opportunities to be part of a chosen species, an evolving species that is playing a part that I can only dream of in the grand scheme of things. So, all I ask is you thank me for helping you on your way, and pray for my soul in the next life." And wow, okay. I learned at that point that being a vegetarian doesn't buy you anything. Being all wrapped up in one ritual is not what it's all about being human. We were designed to be omnivorous. We were designed to be able to adapt to all sorts of bad shit. And that's not that we should welcome bad shit being thrust upon us. We should punish those who deliberately try to poison us, or try to give us diseases that are going to need endless cures, which is essentially how the big pharma industry works. They want to ensure their growth and their profits, and not have to work too hard to figure out how they're going to make that. It's hard work coming up with a new drug that actually does something useful every year, when we've got so many drugs for so many real problems that work pretty well that it's hard to find a little niche to replace. And if you look at the catalog of illnesses, you'll notice that the biggest growing ones are mental illnesses and cancers. Two things which historical evidence shows were not nearly as common in old times. So if this is progress, medical industry, pharma industry, I'm not sure if you're going in the right direction. You may be putting more pressure on this species than you're alleviating. It's not about trying to make people live longer. People were designed to basically give out after about 100 years. Yes, there were other versions of species, humanoid species, that were designed to live much longer. There have already been android humanoids who essentially live forever or until they're disassembled by enemy activity. And yes, they are still out there. You don't believe me? I don't care. You'll find out if it's important to you. If it's not important to you, why do you feel the need to attack me and disbelieve me? Just accept that I have an opinion. I have a truth. If it's not getting in the way of your truth, why do you feel the need to call me insane or delusional? Especially in light of all the insane and delusional things that the media has sold to us in the last few decades. The delusion of weapons of mass destruction, the delusion that Iran had anything to do with 9/11, or Afghanistan for that matter. There are a lot of truths that you just cannot ignore. You can look the other way. You can pretend bin Laden was never a CIA asset. But the truth is he was. The truth is that the Afghanistan issue has been going on for a long, long time. The whole Middle East issue has been going on for a long, long time. The Russia-Ukraine war, it's a continuation of a struggle that's been going for a long, long time. That's why it keeps coming back. It's a pattern that's not healing. And that's what happens to illnesses of the soul. You can put band-aids on them. You can have a war. You can change the borders. You can indoctrinate the people to believe something else, even in as severe a way as was done with the Chinese during the Cultural Revolution. But you're only going to hit some of them because not everyone is going to get your message. And there's always going to be somebody who has access to the Wayback Machine that remembers what truth was before you manufactured it. And that is the nature of the beast. That's why right now people are sifting through, combing through ancient traditions, old writings, trying to decipher languages that are dead, that we are not quite sure of. I mean, ancient Hebrew is not that well known. What people don't realize is that the Bible is a translation. Every inch of the Bible that you've ever been taught is a translation of a language, a dead language. Yes, it is still used, and some of the words are still the same, but if if you have any exposure to how English has changed since Shakespeare's time, if you go look at the original First Folio, or if you go look at the originals of even older English works like Troilus and Cressida, the works of Geoffrey Chaucer, Thomas Malory, you will know that languages change and meanings change. You don't even have to go back that far. You only need to look back in the last few decades. There was a time where good meant good and bad meant bad. And then pop culture got a hold of those words, and suddenly bad was good. We bad! I don't know if anybody remembers, but that was like cool speak for the black community at one point, and for the hip white community. This is how cultural Marxism works. You set out to redefine the important values, the important words of a culture to mean something else so that you can destroy what was there before. Now, this is the difference versus what I do with my teaching. I don't try to destroy. Yes, I'm giving you a new story of what happened. Where did that story come from? Well, it comes from my personal spiritual experience combined with all of my study and research and comparison with the experiences and writings and teachings of others. And I've thought a lot about this. You may not realize it, but I have actually gone to the point of trying to disprove everything that I tell you on this channel. And I haven't come up with a good way to do it. Now that, to me, makes a good theory. And yes, what I present may be a theory. There's deeper truths. And as you can see from my work, it has evolved. It has been refined. When I first started talking about the omniscient creation story, it didn't really focus too much on the characters Borg and Karma. And yet those two, along with God, for me now, are the more important Trinity than the first Trinity that I started out with, of God and his prototypical first and second child. That is also a truth of sorts. It's just approaching from a different point of view. I have not changed my belief. I have broadened it. And this is what omnism is about. I'm not saying your spiritual experience is bullshit. I'm not saying that you are wrong, no matter what your beliefs are. I'm not saying that you're 100% right either. What I am saying is your spiritual beliefs, your particular religion, your particular worldview does reflect the worldview of a particular god or goddess who has their own universe that they develop that worldview within. And there are competing worldviews. There are worldviews that are so different from the world that we agree mostly exists around us that they seem like a fantasy world. And this is often where people visit when they have spiritual experiences without much direction. Okay, so like the average person who uses psychedelic plants or trips on LSD or pure DMT, they will visit the land of the machine elves sometimes, or they may visit the land of the smart Amazon tigers or jaguars or something like that. I mean, there are different realms, and different experiences will lead you to different realms. And different plants or different substances hold gateways to those different spiritual realms. That's their function. That's the memory that they bring to give to our species. They're not doing it out of altruistic motivation. There is no such thing really as altruism. And this is true. Everything is done for some selfish reason. If you feel altruistic, oh, I'm so good, I'm so virtuous, you're doing it because it makes you feel good and virtuous. I don't care how noble you are, it all boils down to that. And you will change the focus of your virtue quite flexibly. You will rationalize it as this is the greater of goods, or this is the lesser of evils. Because we all have the capacity for good and evil. And we don't always have a very good capacity for assessing that. And that's what karma is all about. That's what reincarnation is all about. This is not something new. It's been a facet of almost every religion until Christianity came along, when I actually believe that Christianity was attacked so fiercely exactly because reincarnation was part of the teaching. And folks were committing suicide. They were saying, I'm a slave. I hate my life. I want another life. I'm going to take it. And that worried the hell out of the Roman slave masters. And they said, we got to do something with this religion or we're going to lose all our slaves. Hey, let's turn it into, let's make suicide cardinal sin. And that's what the Catholic Church has done with it. Oh, you take your own life? That is the most horrible thing you could do, because your life is the most important thing you have. Well, I'm telling you, it's not. Your soul is the most important thing you have. And that's very disturbing to many people for the same reason. Because it sort of invalidates a lot of the focus of humanity in preserving and extending life, making life the most important thing, making murder, death, causing death, the most horrific sin. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that it's not. The horrific sin is tyranny. And you can commit tyranny either by killing somebody, taking their life when they didn't want it to be taken, or you can commit tyranny by preserving somebody's life when they want to end it, when they so maybe some of you are going to tune out at that point. Say, Rob, you lost me there. Life really is so important. We've got to make sure every life is sacred, extended as long as possible. Death is so horrible. Okay, if that's the way you want to think, knock yourself out. It's no skin off my belief, my truth. Do I want to die? No. Would I care if I died? Probably not too much, unless it was done in a way that left my family suffering. That's what we care about. That's why we don't want to die, really, is because we don't want to see others suffer, see our loved ones suffer. We don't want to not see them again, and we're worried that we won't. And it's true, you may not see them again. You certainly won't see them again in that exact same form, unless it's sort of a ghost-like apparition in the spiritual realm, because that physical soul vehicle and the soul vehicles of your family and your children and your parents will have ended. The DNA will be preserved if they have children, and their children produce children. So there's a chance of meeting part of the people you've lost, but that soul vehicle itself will never be reassembled. Not in its original form. You can you can clone things. They've cloned sheep. They've cloned a lot of things at this point. If you clone a human being, they will not be the exact same being that they were. They will not have all the memories. They will not have the same soul. That's not how it works. And, once they get to the point of producing a viable human clone and doing the studies to raise it to see if it actually is the same person, they will discover, oh, no, it's not. It has the same DNA. It has a lot of the same genetic programming, but it's a product of the programming that it gets after. And we can't duplicate the programming of the original. Even if we put this clone into a virtual reality chamber and try to get it to live the same life to the age of the original and take over the empire of the Bill Gates or whoever is behind these eugenics experiments. It's not going to work. Similarly, transferring your essence to an android? No, it's not going to work. You can transfer some memories. You can make it look, act, and try to behave like Bill Gates, but it's not going to be Bill Gates. It's going to be, if it attracts, it's either going to be basically a level 0 virtual soul that looks, acts like the original, as long as it encounters situations that it's programmed to deal with. And when it hits something it's not programmed to deal with, it's going to buy a vowel. And if it doesn't have a higher level soul attached to it, that vowel gets bought from the field of the universe that virtual soul lives in. That's how it works. So it's still going to be an AI version of you, Bill Gates. It'll be a pretty convincing AI, but it's not going to be you. The moment you let your physical vehicle die, and it will, you will be dead. Your soul will move on to the afterlife, and you will see a life review. And that life review will show you all the dirty things that you did, either intentionally or unconsciously, and it will expose how the universe feels about you. And then you'll be taken by your spiritual advisors and offered options. Well, here's the things that we think might help you get to a better place in your eternal life, Bill Gates' soul. We're not sure if you're really cut out to stay in the human race. I'm sorry. We've got this other species that really is in need of somebody like you, because they need somebody to stir things up. They need somebody that is going to break some rules. It's going to cause some turmoil. And that species is called Borg. It's a hive mind. And you're going to be born into that species, and you're going to find that you're not part of that hive mind. You're going to be good and learn to be good enough at pretending you are, just like you did pretend to be a regular nice person, to take advantage of your buddy who you stole the idea for MS-DOS from and sold to IBM for lots of money without telling your buddy, and then buying the OS from your buddy for a pittance. This is your karma. You're good at this. We know you can do this assignment. You're going to be a spy in the Borg Empire. You're going to lay low and look for an opportunity to undermine the Hive Queen of whatever Borg species you're born into. You'll do it because you pursue power. You don't like being under their thumb. You don't like having to do what they say and tell you to do all the time. You're a natural. God, Bill, you're going to have so much fun in your next life. And that's how it works. Don't take my word for it. Call me delusional. Call me insane. I don't care. You just wait and see what happens, where you end up. If you're a Buddhist and you think that I can escape from the wheel of karma if I just meditate enough, I can go to nirvana, I can go to this wonderful place where I can lose my identity, lose my soul, because I want to kill my ego. I want to kill my ego. Yeah, you'll get what you want. That's exactly what the Borg hive mind is all about. The most deeply indoctrinated, the most deeply assimilated members of the Borg live in this fantasy world, which is much like the Matrix. They're plugged in, their spiritual energy is being sucked off for use by the higher power, and they're fed visions of sugar plums and fairy tales of what they want to have in the afterlife. If they want to meditate forever, while beautiful girls hand them fruit and titillate them without actually them having to perform, because I'm so superior, I don't have to do that sex stuff, but I can if I want to. Okay. I don't know what your fantasies are. Whatever they are, you're gonna get them in the Borg universe. If you want to live in a fantasy world, there are any number of gods and goddesses that deal in fantasies. They don't care about it because they can make these illusions be whatever they want to be. That's what happens when you get to be a god and you have your own universe. You don't need to run the universe by the rules of the multiverse. You can change them in your own little bubble. Now, what makes that difference from the gods and goddesses that do obey the laws? The gods and goddesses that do obey the laws of the multiverse do so by choosing one of the save game points that God and Karma and Borg and all of the other gods and goddesses have cooked up in the Prime universe. This is the universe of integration. All the best ideas get collected there. And if you want to play the game responsibly, creatively, and actually make a difference, that's where you want to be playing. Now, you won't always be playing there. A lot of times you're not ready for that. You're not ready to be an A-flight creator. So you play for a while in the universe of another god or goddess that is playing God's game, but at a lower level, targeting a lower level soul. The training universe, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't go to the head of the class in your first incarnation. And, if you think it's hard, just imagine how long the day 7 of creation has gone on since God himself reincarnated and took on reincarnation amnesia and had to work his way all through the system to figure out what the hell was going on. And what explained all this weird stuff that was being done by other gods and goddesses who claimed to be him, some of them. It's been a crazy, wild ride for everybody. So, if you think you're so oppressed, you've been so punished and made to feel pain and suffering and, oh, I hate God. God's been more than you will ever experience. You can count on that. God has lived literally millions of lives. And before the whole system was started, before it started evolving, God had to live through an eternity of a spiritual realm with no laws, pure thought. A bunch of snotty-ass children who thought they knew everything and were arguing with each other constantly, saying, "No, I'm right. No, I'm right. Ah, you're wrong. I'm right." And forming little teams and cliques around their ideas, and nobody ever able to prove anybody else was wrong. This time, before time, was absolutely the worst nursery school you could possibly imagine. Nobody had any respect for the elders. They were throwing things around, doing whatever they wanted to do, with absolutely no guide or structure, other than knowing that there was a certain hierarchy of who existed first. That was the only thing, absolutely only thing, that gave God, the first soul, any power over those I call them bastards, but God produced them, right? So, even God makes bastards. And those early souls were a bunch of bastards. In fact, God himself was a bastard. That's why it took so long for the seventh day of creation to complete, because God still had a lot to learn. And things that he would never have learned if he hadn't been humiliated by incarnation. And that's what all of you are going through. You are each getting a chance to be your own Messiah. You will never be God. You will never be the first soul. Never even close. Most of you are so far removed from the first souls that it's going to seem fantastical to you that they ever existed. The vast majority of you were created through the latest version of reincarnation and karma, which is related to the multiverse, is related to the idea of multiple realities, parallel universes, parallel timelines. You may think that you are the reincarnation of Cleopatra. I met a woman like that. She was absolutely certain of it. And I'm absolutely certain that she was a level 0 virtual soul who just happened to have forked off of a line of virtual souls that led back to the real Cleopatra soul. And this is the danger of some of your past life memories. You may feel an affinity, an association with a certain, especially famous character of the past. You may think, oh, I was that in the past life. Oh, I identify so much with Cleopatra. Okay. That affinity, that affection, that attraction may indicate that you are forked off of a lineage that goes back to that original soul. But that's not necessarily you. And in fact, you can tell the difference if you actually do some of the things that open the portals that allow you to explore your past lives. Certainly when you die, you will become very clearly aware of the error of your assumption that I was Cleopatra. Because you won't have all of those memories. You will have memories of what little remembrance this lineage of virtual souls going back to the original had. And, it's kind of like having an old photograph in your house and making up a story around it. And it's easier to make up a story if there's already a story out there and it's a famous person. Ooh, Cleopatra. Ooh, I resonate with that movie or that picture or that music, and this is the difference between a real past life and some of the fantasy past lives that people are promoting. And these fantasy past lives get used by unscrupulous souls of a higher consciousness than you. They get encouraged. You've got all these people out there saying, well, I'm channeling St. Michael, I'm channeling Nostradamus. And, maybe some of them are the actual reincarnation of those souls. Maybe some of them are actually communicating with those souls in their current incarnation in the spirit world or in the God world. This is possible. It's also possible that that this other soul is masquerading as their fantasy character, as their, quote, higher self, or whatever. This is the risk of all spiritual experience. There is an element of, is it real or is it Memorex? And this is why it was at least 3 years of really deep spiritual awakening. And I was already on a path, pretty much since I started acting and started realizing that there was stuff in me that I didn't know was there. Capabilities and talents and things that I never imagined that I had. And an interest, I didn't really enjoy acting that much. What I enjoyed was playing characters because it allowed me to explore other lives. And that felt like very liberating because every character that I embodied in my acting career, well, almost every, there were some that, my identification with was not very near and I couldn't really relate to them very well. And I think most actors and actresses have experienced that. There are some roles that you just feel are naturally yours. Even if it's not real close to your current character, you just somehow know how to play that character. And this is what really good actors and actresses are able to do. They're able to embody many different characters. Why? Because they're old souls. Because they have lived lives that were much like that character. They have experienced the darknesses, the lightnesses, in ways that allow them to play those things very convincingly. This is a large part of some of the schools of method acting use a technique called sense memory. And they say, well, you've got basically the memory of all the sensations, all the things you've experienced. Go find something in your experience that's closest to the situation and put yourself in that. And some people try to do it that way, and it's very artificial. There's other people that have a deeper sense memory, and it's because that memory comes from previous lives whose situations were very like the ones being portrayed. In fact, in historical plays, maybe even identical. Can you imagine anyone able to play Joan of Arc better than the soul that was Joan of Arc in some other life? Or was one of the virtual souls forked off Joan of Arc early enough to have a deeper memory of that, a deeper sense memory than just, oh, some association with that name or that character, that time period. You see what I mean? At any rate, tying back to criticism of your reality, it is your reality, and you should be its greatest critic yourself. You should always question what your eyes are telling you. You should question the automatic assumptions you grew up with. I've done that all my life. I have changed my opinions on things, my worldview, diametrically. And anybody who knows me can vouch for that. It shows up in what I did as a child, what I was interested in, what I decided to do in college, what I decided to do after college, all of the job hops and changes that I made in my corporate career, and the development of my second career, or it was actually more than a second career, it was like fourth or fifth career as an actor. And now my career as a kind of strange spiritual guy that's got this weird podcast that pretty much flies in the face of everything anybody else is preaching. Okay, fine. Call me insane. Call me delusional. I know the difference because I have been through those insane, delusional periods. And that is exactly what happens when you are on a spiritually accelerated path. It's not all roses and rainbows and unicorns. You go through great elation, and you go through these dark nights of the soul where you're ready to commit suicide. You're so off base. Imagine how it feels to be put in a mental hospital by your loved ones because they think you're crazy and not knowing when you'll ever get out. Have you ever been to a place like that? It's a lot like a prison. Maybe with less avenues of entertainment because they want to shut you out from the outside world. There's no TV. Well, or maybe there's a communal TV and all the channels are in another language, which you don't speak. I've been there twice. Yeah. I know the difference between insanity and delusion and reality. Now, those times where I have actually been, quote, insane or delusional, I understand why they happened and what was going on then. I was in a different reality. I can talk about them in detail. I don't know where those realities exist or why. Maybe they only existed temporarily to teach me a lesson. Maybe they never happened anywhere. But they happened for a reason. They weren't accidental. They weren't random. They weren't a bit of undigested beef, some random firing of neurons that gave me this very organized and very real experience of an alternate reality. I'm sorry, I cannot believe that, materialist scientists, and anybody who has really experienced a deep spiritual experience will not believe you either. And you won't believe yourself if you ever have an experience like that. And that's why I think so few of your kind will be brave enough to try spiritual substances. See what you get out of a DMT or LSD or an ayahuasca ceremony. Oh yeah, you'll be brave enough to do pot. which is, hardly touches anybody. It puts you in kind of a euphoric state that you might have a slight sense of spiritual engagement, but you're not getting there, folks. If you think that that's all there is to it, oh, it's just, kind of like how I feel in pot, and I'm just kind of zoned out and I can kind of see things from a different point of view, and okay, I kind of get where that's all just chemicals, okay? Sorry. You haven't delved deep enough to speak authoritatively on the subject. You can sit in your labs and do your experiments and test other people and judge their experiences and winnow down what you want to conclude from them to support your materialistic theories and reject spirituality. Fine, go ahead. There's a heaven for you too. And when you get there, you'll gradually start realizing that it's more complicated. Or you might not. You know what? There's a big demand for materialistic, deterministic souls. They run all the machinery that works on autopilot. There's a lot of stuff in the multiverse that doesn't need a thinker. It needs to work like clockwork. Do this every time this happens. If you want to work like a program, like a computer program, you want your world to be like that, to be so deterministic and sure and everything working according to the laws of physics and chemistry, you'll get your wish. I'm not telling you not to believe that. I'm telling you what you're going to get by pursuing that and not exploring your spiritual side. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm not saying it's going to be good for you. It may be just wonderful for you advanced scientists to go, take a spell as the oversoul of a brown dwarf or a star or a complex molecule and run that system for a while. It'll probably be one that you've studied, in fact. Your scientific specialty is kind of guiding you to where you're going to get more detailed experience, because you don't really understand a system until you know it from both ends, from within and without. That's how knowledge is built, from the bottom, from the top. You can't look at it from either point of view and come to a full understanding. This is kind of one of the deeper aspects of this as above, so below truth. Patterns repeat. They have a different shape, they have a different manifestation, and it's not until you get close enough or far enough away from the pattern that you can recognize it. This is why science is always exploring on both ends of the spectrum and from within the middle. A fractal can be viewed in any magnification, and you'll always see new details. Zooming out and zooming in is the essence of why you have to have reincarnation. You're not going to get every perspective in one lifetime, in one soul vehicle. You'll never learn enough to be a higher level soul, a more conscious soul from one perspective. So there's not a lot of pressure on you, but if you take a whole lifetime and you don't learn anything from it, you just keep repeating the same old perspectives, then you're going to be kind of viewed by the multiverse as, okay, this is a soul that probably belongs in a Borg environment. Let's give them a repeat experience of what they like, feed them their dopamine, and milk their spiritual energy for use by a higher power. And if you like the idea of uh, let Jesus lead, just tell me what to do, point me in the right direction, and I'll follow you to the ends of the earth. Mother Nature, my great goddess, the supreme female that I worship, fine. If that's your bent, if you want to follow nature, if you want to follow Jesus, if you want to follow Allah, follow. Just be sure who you're following and what the ramifications of abdicating your free will to something else, some other ideal, some set of precepts, some set of laws, instead of thinking about what you're doing and making up your own laws and testing them, seeing how they interact with the laws of others. Taking a few chances. Yes, sometimes you're going to go to jail. Sometimes you're going to end up in an insane asylum. That's a choice. Or you can play the game and pretend like you didn't see what you saw. Pretend like the world works like they tell you it does, even though it's obvious to you that that's not working. Yes, you can hide yourself off in a little bubble and make everyone else comfortable and yourself miserable with cognitive dissonance. I've decided not to do that. And I'm never going to do that. I'm going to keep preaching what I preach and thinking what I think and learning what I learn and adapting my beliefs and my message to what I've learned, what I've integrated, until I die. Nobody wants to view my channel? Okay. I think I can survive on Social Security for the rest of my life and still support my family. Maybe that's not true. Maybe the world will end tomorrow. Maybe the United States will stop issuing Social Security checks and I'll be put in a difficult situation. I'll have to go find a way to make enough money to support my family. Nothing I haven't done before. I will do it more consciously this time. And in a different situation, I'll learn more from it. I'll see it from a different perspective. I may die without a cent. I may die face down in a ditch, abandoned by everyone I love. Or the world may die around me. I'm just interested to see how it's all going to end. I'm here for the ride. And I'm going to tell you what I've learned about the ride so far, insofar as I'm able to on my channel. And if you like it, listen to the channel. If you don't, tune out. If it challenges you and you want to attack me, hey, go ahead. All attention is good. I'm not going to seek it out. I'm not going to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial. If you find me controversial, it's because I have to be, because that is my truth. That is what I believe. This is what I've come to know through my personal experience. So, I think what you might learn from that is that if your personal experience, if your faith is as strong as mine, well, by God, cling to it till it's challenged enough that you feel like the cognitive dissonance requires a modification. And what I would encourage you to do is not make huge modifications, such as I made when I was young. I was very disgruntled with the whole Christian experience of the Presbyterian Church. I kind of like some aspects of the Catholic Church. I like the art and the music and a lot of the ideas of faith that were incorporated in the Catholic view of Christianity, as opposed to the Presbyterian view that I was forced to be part of. I chose to reject all of them for a while and become an atheist for a while. And then I never quite became a full-blown atheist. I was always kind of wavering on the agnostic side. And I explored many other areas. I enjoyed reading about comparative mythology. I really enjoyed learning about the pre-Christian religions. I was very fascinated with those. I guess I've always found that a pantheistic, and this is where you're going to get sidetracked by some people who say I am a pantheist. What they mean now by a pantheist is that everything is God, which is, part of the oneness bullshit. I'm sorry, I call it bullshit. I don't like it. I don't like this cosmic oneness, love, light, and we're all one cult. I think it's a very evil cult. It's a very dangerous cult. It's a very narrow-minded and low-level cult. And it's dangerous because they actually think they're the most enlightened souls in the shed. And that's very dangerous. A false sense of superiority is extremely dangerous because that's what higher consciousness souls prey on. It's kind of like the Pinocchio syndrome. If you ever watched the movie Pinocchio, it's a great watch. I would watch it again and again because you'll learn a lot from that movie. We are all, every soul is like a Pinocchio, starting out as a marionette that can be twisted around by anybody who's got control of the strings. And even though Pinocchio has no strings, you can see the strings being pulled by, these cats, the wolf and the cat that are trying to lead him astray. And that's a very, very good representation of what the Pied Piper spiritual world is trying to do to you. It may be very popular. It may be cool to jump on this love, light, and oneness cult. Oh, it feels so good. I feel so loving, and I have so many people around me who are so loving. Oh, it makes me feel... Ooh. Okay, if you want, go for that. But it is a very false religion. It is a very, very narrow-minded truth. Much more narrow-minded, in fact, than Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or any of the other traditional religions in any of their ways, shapes, or forms. A lot more thought has gone into traditional religions than has gone into this New Age bullshit. And that's what it is. It is bullshit. It is commercialized spirituality. That's why it sells. That's why it gets the likes, shares, and subscribes, and they have so many followers, and they can organize seminars, and people come from all around the world to hear the great Dalai Lama speak. Or the Greg Bradens of the world, or the Bruce Liptons, or Joe Dispenzas. They have some good things to say, and they help some people. I'm not knocking them completely. And their teachings have a little bit of truth in them. Everything does, or it wouldn't survive the test of use. But they have a lot of untruth in them. And more untruth than not if they don't ever talk about karma. If they don't ever talk about reincarnation, if they make it all about what you can do in this life, you've got to do it in this life. And there's this pressure that a lot of them put on you that say, oh, you've got to become enlightened or you're going to die unenlightened. Fuck that shit. Who are they to judge what you accomplished with this life? We're not all here to become enlightened. That's bullshit. That's oneness bullshit. We're not all on the same spiritual path. I'm sorry. That is a lie. That is why I hate this oneness bullshit. Because it tells you that there's one path that we're all supposed to go on. It's not true. Every soul has their individual speciality, their individual attraction to different aspects of creation, of the multiverse. Some are going to be great scientists, some are going to be great artists, some are going to be the atlas that holds up some forgotten corner of the multiverse for what might seem like an eternity, providing structure for other souls to develop in, sort of giving them a petri dish to do their experiments in. And that's a great role. It's not offering a lot of creativity. In fact, it discourages it. The souls that embody universes of creation don't interfere too much. They don't push and prod at the experiment that they are presiding over. The oversoul of the prime universe is not driving that universe. They are a senior creator who has decided, I'm going to make my mission in this God incarnation to sit back and let this experiment run and not poke and prod at it, because this is the prime universe. It doesn't work that way. If I started pushing it to be one way or another, I would be acting like a Borg, trying to control this experiment, trying to interfere with this experiment, and I would be expelled immediately from the stewardship of the prime universe. This is how the real gods work. They are not almighty micromanagers of anything but their own universe. And if they are of that variety, they are not welcome in the prime universe of creation. They are not going to be involved in evolving the next major timeline, the major save game of this big event that we're part of, that's unfolding all around us. And you don't have to be part of that, just like they don't have to be part of that. And that's just fine. Everything serves a purpose. If you're not involved in creating, you might be involved in teaching. You might be involved in just providing a structure for creation to happen within. It's all important. It's all part of the multiverse. And anyone that tells you that your particular passions, your particular desires, your particular worldview is worthless, that you're insane, you're delusional, they can tell them to stuff it. Unless you feel uncomfortable with that. Unless, my worldview is really causing me not to have a very good life. I want to give it up. Give it up. Don't stick to it if you don't have that much faith. You're the only one that gets to decide what you have faith in, what you consider truth, what you consider untruth. Nobody else should be able to decide that for you. If you're going to abdicate that decision to someone else, that is your right too. But don't complain about the consequences. Don't complain, well, I suffer and I have so much pain. If you have suffering and pain, and you haven't done everything you can to end that suffering and pain, it's your own fault. Up to and including end this life. If there's that much suffering and pain in your life, end it. Why don't you end it? Or ask somebody else to help you end it. It's really easy to do once you make up your mind to do it. And most people don't. Why? Because they don't want to end this life. They just want sympathy. This is why people go out and they slash their wrists or they take some pills knowing that they're not really committing suicide, but they're just getting attention. They're going to end up in the hospital with their stomach pumped or with some scars on their wrist. It's to get attention. It's not because you really wanted to commit suicide. There's a big difference. Somebody that really wants to commit suicide will do it. And that is their right. So long as in doing so, they don't take a bunch of other people with them. This is the risk, the karmic risk of suicide. And yes, one suicide can cause others. The suicide of a celebrity can cause despair in others. The suicide of an individual can cause despair in their family that will lead to other suicides, that will lead to emotional trauma. Yes, there is karma in this action. And to the extent that you know that you're going to be harming others, manipulating them in some way with your death, to the extent that your death is engineered because they're going to feel so bad when I commit suicide. They're finally going to understand how they've used me and manipulated me and controlled me, and they're going to be sorry. Okay, if that is the way that you go about committing suicide, yes, that is an incredibly dark karmic choice to make. And you're going to regret that. In your life review, there will be no hiding from the fact that your suicide was an attempt, an existential attempt, to use and manipulate others and hurt others through your death. Okay, so it's not an easy decision. And, maybe the original Christ, whoever that was, wasn't awake enough, wasn't perceptive enough to see the picture in a way that they could explain, well, okay, so why should we endure pain and suffering? The Buddha couldn't answer that, right? He said it must be some kind of punishment. It must be something you can escape from if you just do the right spiritual practice. If you just meditate right, you can escape from this and just fade away into nirvana. I'm sorry, that was a stab at a solution, a stab at understanding whatever mystical revelations the real Buddha had. And if you listen to my other work, I will tell you that I am absolutely certain that the first Buddha, the original one who had this idea of escaping from reincarnation and karma to this oneness, was not a creature of this planet, was not human, was in fact one of the Borg army that came up with a good idea that we reused. This is how creation works. Borg is not the enemy. The hive minds are not really the enemy. Yes, we have to fight them because we don't want all of creation to be taken over by a hive mind. But they do serve a purpose. They give souls a taste of what it's like to be completely dominated, to be in sort of the perfect Orwellian dystopia. What it's like to be in the Matrix as it's presented in the movie. Yes, there are places in the multiverse that run that way, and it's not very nice. And the Matrix movie was very right to point out that this is kind of dystopian, isn't it? The reality is even worse than that, because the folks plugged into the Matrix, they plugged into the Borg universes, actually think they're having a wonderful time doing everything that they wanted. The endless Pinocchio experience, if you will. Maybe you want that. That's fine. Your spiritual energy will be used for some purpose. Guaranteed. The universe is a very, very frugal place. Everything gets used in some way or fashion, serves some purpose in creation. That's the nature of the whole system. That's the nature of karma. That's the nature of the soul's Merkaba. Its unique field of spiritual energy attracts it to different roles, different incarnations. Some souls will never advance past the zero level of consciousness, and they will spend eternity doing some mindless programmed task that's prescribed in almost every detail by the laws of physics and chemistry. Sorry, that's just the nature of things. Not everyone gets to be a god. Contrary to the oneness belief, not everyone will ever be capital G God. There is only one first soul, and that first soul is not the almighty micromanager of your universe. That first soul was the one who imagined the multiverse and got his family jazzed up to give it a shot, and made it a fair game by allowing another team to gather around this board cat. Let me just answer my wife here. She's calling. Hey, I'm still podcasting. Can I have a few more minutes? I'm almost done. Okay? Love you, babe. Look at this woman. Isn't she wonderful? I don't know if you can see her through the... No, she's already hung up. Anyway, I love that woman. In a way that I've never loved any woman before. So, darling, if you're out there listening to this, you and our little son, Mikhail, you're incredible. Anyway, back to the point. I think we're about ready to wrap up anyway. This is a very special time we live in. And yes, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of people telling other people they're insane or delusional, conspiracy theorists. And, you know, a lot of that is a bit of the pot calling the kettle black. And that happens all the time. And I'm guilty of it too. I will tell people you're crazy, you're delusional. I'll at least try to explain why, give them a few facts from my catalog of facts to rationalize, to help them understand my point of view. And I guess that's what separates people that are doing something positive from the people that are doing something negative. If all you can do is criticize and accuse and name call, if that's all you're doing, if all you're doing is posting memes from your beloved echo chamber and not thinking beyond that, not researching beyond that, not looking at it from at least the point of view of the people that are telling you you're insane or delusional, and saying, well, how I answer you. This is why I think you are wrong. Why I think I'm not insane. Why I think I'm not delusional. And I guess maybe this whole segment was an example of how you could go about doing that. It may take an hour and a half to explain to the world why you're not crazy, why you're not delusional, why you think that they are wrong to label you that. and why you think that they may have an ulterior motive in doing so, because you challenge their worldview in a way that they don't like it to be challenged. I get it. I can promise you, if anybody challenges my worldview in any serious way, I will find a way to answer it, or I will change my worldview. I can promise that because I have changed my worldview many times when it became challenged to the point that I could no longer sustain that belief system. Now, I didn't throw it out. I didn't completely destroy it and jump on the communist bandwagon, become a Marxist. This is the whole raison d'etre of Marxism. The idea is that if there's anything wrong with the current culture, the current belief system, the current system, it all must be destroyed and torn down so we can build something better. If you believe along those lines, well, you're welcome to it, but I'm going to fight you. I don't think that works. Tearing things down to build something better is stupid. If you've got something that's working halfway decent, keep what works and evolve something better to fix the stuff that doesn't work. This is how creation has worked from the very beginning. Yes, there have been times where we had to tear down some things. And the Gaia experiment is no exception. Look at our solar system. Why don't we have a planet where the asteroid belt is? How did we end up having the Earth and the Moon positioned so incredibly well as to allow for eclipses? To allow for people basing long-term investigations, long-term tracking of time and events on the precession of the equinoxes, on the zodiac. Attracted our attention to groups of stars such that we gave them special names, especially 12 particularly wonderful star arrangements that we associated with this precession of the equinoxes. It was put here for a reason. Not to give astrologists a livelihood that they could play on. Yes, there probably are some truths based in astrology, but most of what happens in that milieu is bullshit. Those of you looking at your horoscope every day, seeing what the horoscope is saying so you can know how to plan your day, I'm sorry, you're useful idiots. You are reading a lot more into something that's put out there by somebody who's making money off your eyeballs than is there. You only have to think about it logically. How many Sagittariuses are there in the world? Is that horoscope really valid for all those people? Insane. Even if you're doing a natal chart, how many people are born at the same time in the same, not the same place. Okay, so you need to track it down. If you really wanted to do a horoscope, you would have to track it down to the gnat's ass of where you existed in the multiverse when you were born. And then maybe, if you knew where every other thing that could possibly affect your life, your being, could you lay out a complete chart of your horoscope? It's all just an approximation. And anyone who tells you it's more than that is a Pied Piper, is using you, is profiteering from your gullibility. Anyone that tells you the exact diet you need to use to be perfectly healthy and advance spiritually and reach your higher vibrational state is telling you bullshit. You are an individual. Each person has different things that their body likes or doesn't like. There are people who can drink alcohol and who are not alcoholics, who don't get liver problems, who will live to a ripe old age of 110, drinking a bottle of vodka every day. There are folks in Russia that have done just that. There are folks in France that have drunk wine, copious amounts of wine every day, and lived to a ripe old age, eating wine and cheese and as much meat as they wanted to have. So don't give us this bullshit and try to pretend like you know something nobody else knows. It can be useful. I'm not saying it isn't. And by all means, if you find people that need your particular brand of healing, your particular regimen of spiritual practice or dietary practice or whatever, crystal practice, go ahead. But don't pretend like you know everything, or you are committing a karmic sin. If you think that you can prognosticate the future for anybody, you're telling them bullshit. You may be right in some cases, but there are many different futures in the multiverse. And these kind of people exist from self-fulfilling prophecy. They live off suggestion. They read you. They see what kind of person you are. They get an idea through their initial exploration what your sensitivities are and what your weaknesses and strengths are, what your desires are, and they make a line of bullshit to fit that. And this is what palm readers, future tellers, tarot card pullers are mostly about. I'm not saying that that's not something that has a spiritual component. I'm not saying that there aren't people that can look at your palm and tell you something useful about yourself, or who can pull cards out of a tarot deck and give you something useful to work with. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that if there are those who promote those tools as being universally applicable and something that everyone should do, everyone should. I mean, how many people have you heard spout the bullshit that, well, all politicians should have to do ayahuasca or do DMT before they could have public office, because then they would really understand what they. This is absolute flipping out insane bullshit. It's not for everybody. Just because DMT made you feel woo and showed you the spirit elves and showed you the oneness, and okay, you saw your own trip, your own view, your own experience of what might be deeper truths, but you interpreted it within a very narrow viewpoint of your experience. Acknowledge that. That's why I spend so much time talking about my experience. I did 3 whole podcasts and told you the story of my life, so you would have some inkling of what I've been through to get to this point. And if you have any doubts about my sanity, about my delusionality, I encourage you to watch those 3 segments from beginning to end and learn a little bit more about who Rob Tromp is before you start calling me names. And I guess that would be where I leave it here. For the Honest Hour, this is Rob Tromp. Like, share, subscribe, interact in any way you like, and I will interact with you if I choose to. Mostly I do choose because I like to interact with people. Even if those interactions are not so pleasant, I actually kind of get a kick out of it. When people attack me, I have this little devilish streak inside of me. I think it's maybe this is a DNA characteristic, as most of the Trumps have this little bit of a demon spark that likes to mess with people. I think most of us have a little bit of that to some extent. If you don't like me messing with you, block, disconnect. That's the joy of not being one. This is why I think the oneness bullshit is such bullshit, because we all have a need for both connection and disconnection. Nobody wants to be one. We like to have our little private moments. We like to have our secrets. We like to have things about us that we don't share. This is part and parcel proof that we are not one. I would defy anyone to convince me otherwise. So, I think that deals with what are probably my largest critics. I don't know. I guess there's a lot of people in traditional religions whose dogma I challenge. You're welcome to throw darts at me and tell me why I'm insane and delusional. I'd love to engage with you in a rational conversation based upon arguments. Rational, logical arguments, statements of truth that may be proved or disproved through further exploration. This is what science is all about. This is what dialogue is supposed to be about. This is what philosophy is supposed to be about. It's not direct anal extraction of, this is the science, this is the truth. I'm sorry, if you think like that, you're thinking like a Marxist. And I don't mind telling you, I don't like Marxist thought. I don't like critical thinking. Even though many people think that that's the way that you're supposed to think. Critical thinking is Marxist thinking, and it is absolute bullshit. Sue me. All right, till next time, it's been fun. Happy karma all, and we'll see you again on the Omnish Tower.